I adjusted my cheap uniform and took a deep breath before stepping into the store. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above me, casting a dull glow over the shelves stocked with everyday essentials. It was strange standing here, not as the CEO, but as just another employee. No one knew who I really was. And that was exactly what I wanted. I had built this company from the ground up, pouring my heart and soul into it. But lately, I had heard whispers, complaints from employees about mistreatment, about wages being unfairly cut, about a manager who seemed more interested in profits than people. I had to see it for myself. So I went undercover. "Hey, new girl." A sharp voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned to see a man in his late 40s, wearing a suit that looked expensive but somehow felt cheap. His name tag read, "Rick, manager." "You're late," he said, crossing his arms. "Not a great start." I checked the time. I was 5 minutes early. Doesn't matter, he cut me off. "Rules are rules. Docking your first paycheck." My stomach tightened. This was exactly why I was here. "Understood," I said, keeping my voice even. "Good," Rick smirked. "Now get to work." As I walked to the stockroom, I felt a fire growing inside me. Rick had no idea who he was talking to, but soon he would. The hours dragged on, but I kept my head down and focused on my work. The store was busy, and I could see Rick moving around, barking orders, always watching for any little mistake. He was tough on everyone, especially the new hires like me. I tried to stay out of his way, but there were moments when he seemed to go out of his way to make sure I knew my place. He made snide remarks when I did something wrong, like stacking boxes the wrong way or being a minute late with a task. Every time, I felt my blood boil. But I wasn't here to get into a fight, I was here to learn. As the day went on, I noticed something else. The workers weren't happy. Their faces were tense, their movements rushed. It wasn't just the manager's attitude, it was the atmosphere of the whole place. People were scared to speak up, scared of making mistakes. I found myself talking to a few of the others when Rick wasn't around. They whispered to me about how things had changed in the past year. When Rick took over as manager, things went downhill. Paychecks were smaller, hours were longer, and the promises of benefits were nothing more than empty words. I felt sick. I had built this company on the belief that people were the most important part of it. If they weren't treated well, the whole thing would fall apart. But here, it was like workers were just numbers. I needed to confront Rick. But how? As the evening came to a close, I found myself alone in the break room, staring at my reflection in the small mirror. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. I was so used to being the boss, but right now, I was just another worker. But it was time for a change. The next day, I decided it was time to face Rick. I couldn't wait any longer to get to the bottom of what was happening in my own company. I found him in his office, the door slightly ajar. He was on the phone, his voice low but forceful. "Yeah, I'll make sure the new hires don't get any overtime. The budget's tight. No exceptions." I knocked softly before entering. He glanced up, his face turning cold when he saw me. "What now?" he grumbled, clearly annoyed. I took a deep breath, stepping forward. "We need to talk." His eyes narrowed. "About what?" "About how you're treating the employees," I said, my voice steady but firm. "The way you're running things here, it's wrong." Rick chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "You're out of your depth, kid. I've been managing for years. You think you know better?" I didn't flinch. "I do." He stood up, his tall frame looming over me. "Listen, sweetheart. If you want to stay employed, I suggest you don't go around making trouble. I run things my way. If you don't like it, there's the door." Something snapped inside me. I knew I had to make him see the truth, not just for me, but for everyone he was hurting. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my company ID. I held it up for him to see. Rick's expression faltered as he stared at the card, his face slowly draining of color. "Wait, what is that?" "It's me," I said, my voice calm. "I'm the CEO of this company, and I don't tolerate people like you running things into the ground." His mouth went dry. You're the CEO?" "Yes," I said, my gaze unwavering. "And you're fired." Rick took a step back, stumbling over his words. "You can't do that. You can't just come in here and—" "I just did," I interrupted. "The way you've been treating these people is unacceptable, and the damage you've caused won't be fixed by any excuse you can make." He opened his mouth to protest again, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. "Pack up your things, Rick," I called over my shoulder. "Your time here is over." As soon as I walked out of Rick's office, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The damage he had done was deep, and fixing it wouldn't happen overnight. I headed straight to the break room, where the employees were already gathered, nervously eyeing each other. The tension was thick, like they were waiting for something to go wrong. I could feel the whispers of fear floating around. When they saw me enter, they went quiet. I could tell they were wondering what was going to happen next. "I just wanted to let you all know," I began, standing in front of them, "that Rick has been let go. And I'm going to make sure things are different here. For all of you." A few faces lit up with surprise, others with cautious hope, but there was still uncertainty. They had been burned too many times before. One of the older women, Maria, stood up. "You mean it? Things are really gonna change?" I nodded, my heart in my throat. "Yes, I promise. You're not just workers here. You're the heart of this company, and I'm going to make sure you're treated like it." There was a collective sigh of relief. I could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the weight they had been carrying for so long. It wasn't just about fair pay or better hours, it was about respect, about knowing they mattered. "But it's going to take time," I added, my voice softening. "I need your help. I need you to trust me, and we'll get this place back on track." The room was silent for a moment, then slowly people started nodding. Maria gave me a small smile. "We're with you, boss." I felt a rush of emotion. They didn't know how much this meant to me. These weren't just employees, they were real people, with families, with lives outside of these walls. They deserved better. And I wasn't going to stop until they got it. As I left the break room, I made a promise to myself. I was going to make this company everything it was meant to be. And I wasn't going to let anything or anyone stand in the way. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, restructuring, and implementing changes. I wasn't just the CEO anymore. I was a leader, a real one. I spent every moment making sure my employees knew they were heard. I listened to their concerns, fixed the problems that Rick had caused, and made sure everyone knew I wasn't just an image on a screen. I was here. But the real test came when I decided to talk to the whole company. I wanted to explain what was happening, to assure everyone that we were rebuilding together. The conference room was packed, with everyone gathered in anticipation. I stood at the front, trying to calm the nerves I was feeling. This was a huge moment. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice steady. "I know things have been rough for a while. Under the previous management, this company lost sight of what matters the most, you, the people who make this place what it is." I paused, letting the words sink in. I could feel the room's energy shift, like they were finally realizing they weren't alone. "I'm here to change that," I continued. "I'm here to make sure you're treated with respect, with fairness, and that this company treats you like family, because that's what you are to me." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. People looked at each other, exchanging glances, unsure if they could really believe it. But I could see the hope in their eyes. "Some changes are already underway," I said, glancing at my notes. "We're increasing pay for all employees, improving our benefits, and we're going to give everyone a voice in the decisions we make going forward." The room was quiet for a moment, then slowly, someone clapped. Then another person. And another. Soon, the entire room was applauding. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it away, holding back my emotions. This was the moment I had been fighting for, the moment they saw I meant it. After the meeting, people came up to thank me, to tell me how much this meant to them. I felt a deep sense of pride, but I knew the hardest part was still ahead. We had a long road to rebuild trust, to rebuild the company. But I was ready. I knew we could do it together. Everything was slowly falling into place. We were implementing new policies, raising morale, and the company's atmosphere had changed. People were working with more energy, more purpose. But deep down, I knew I couldn't fully move forward until I discovered the full truth about what Rick had been up to. It wasn't just about firing him. It wasn't just about fixing what was broken on the surface. I needed to understand the full extent of his actions. I had a feeling there was more that hadn't come to light yet. One evening, after everyone had left, I stayed behind in the office. My fingers tapped nervously on the desk as I stared at the pile of files in front of me. These were the financial records from Rick's time as manager. I went through them, page by page, each number making my stomach twist. The irregularities were glaring, but it wasn't until I reached a set of transactions that everything clicked. Rick had been siphoning money from the company accounts into a private fund. Not just a small amount, millions had been funneled out. He had been skimming from employee wages, using his position to line his pockets, while everyone else suffered. I froze, my hands trembling. This wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. I immediately called my lawyer, asking him to come in. When he arrived, I showed him the evidence. His expression darkened as he reviewed the files. "This is bad, Emily. He could be facing charges for this. You're gonna need to report this to the authorities." I nodded, my heart heavy. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. It wasn't just the employees he had hurt. He had hurt the very foundation of everything I had built. But I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't let him get away with it. "We're going to take action," I said, my voice determined. "We'll make sure he pays for what he's done, and we'll fix everything he tried to destroy." The lawyer gave a slow nod, acknowledging the severity of the situation. It was time to take the next step. The moment I made the decision to go after Rick, everything changed. It wasn't just about protecting the company anymore, it was about holding him accountable for the damage he had caused. The lives he'd disrupted. The trust he had broken. I called in the authorities and handed over everything I had, every file, every transaction, every piece of evidence. They assured me they would handle it from there. But even as I did the right thing, I felt a pang of uncertainty. Was I doing the right thing? Would this hurt the company in the long run? The next few weeks were a whirlwind. News of the investigation spread quickly, and there was no turning back. The company was under a microscope now. Employees were nervous, and some even wondered if they would lose their jobs. I couldn't blame them for their fears. They had been betrayed too many times before. But I made sure to address them. I stood in front of the entire team during one of our weekly meetings. The weight of the situation felt heavier than ever, but I knew I had to stay strong. "Everyone," I began, my voice firm yet gentle, "I know things are uncertain right now, but I want you to know, we are doing everything we can to make sure this company stands stronger than before. Rick's actions were wrong, he betrayed all of us, but that doesn't change our commitment to each other. We're in this together." I looked out at their faces, some still unsure but many others starting to nod, starting to trust again. "None of you will lose your jobs over this," I continued. "The company will recover, and it will be better than it ever was. I promise you that." The room was quiet for a moment, and then a few employees began to clap. One by one, others joined in, the sound growing louder and louder. It wasn't just relief, it was hope. The kind of hope that had been missing for so long. The next day, Rick was arrested. His scheme had been uncovered in full, and the charges against him were severe. I felt no joy in it, only a grim sense of justice. He had stolen from the company, from the people who trusted him, and now he would have to face the consequences. As the dust settled and things began to return to normal, I realized something. This wasn't just about making the company profitable again. It was about rebuilding the trust, the respect, and the integrity that had been lost, and that, more than anything, would take time. But it was worth it. As the months went by, the company began to heal. The changes we made, the promises I had kept, they were starting to show. Employees were more engaged, more motivated, and I could feel the shift in the atmosphere every time I walked through the doors. It wasn't just about the financials anymore, it was about the people. I had learned that leadership was about trust, about earning the respect of those you lead. I couldn't simply be the CEO from behind a desk. I had to be there, working alongside them, listening to their struggles and celebrating their successes. One afternoon as I walked through the main floor, I spotted Maria. She was the one who had stood up for me at the beginning, the one who had believed in me when no one else did. She waved me over with a smile. "Boss," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude, "I just wanted to thank you again for everything you've done. This place, it feels like home now. It's different." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "It's your hard work that made the difference, Maria. I'm just here to help guide you." She laughed softly. "Still, you didn't have to fight for us the way you did. A lot of bosses would have just let things slide." I paused, thinking for a moment. I couldn't let it slide. You all deserved better than that. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. I could see the pride in her eyes. I knew she wasn't just speaking for herself, she was speaking for all of them. As I walked away, I glanced at the workers around me, at the smiles, at the renewed energy, at the feeling of purpose in the air. And I realized something. I had built this company, not on money or power, but on the foundation of trust and respect. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But I had learned that no matter how tough the situation, no matter how deep the betrayal, there was always a way to rebuild. And I was going to make sure that this company and the people in it stayed strong, no matter what came our way. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a reminder that no matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a chance to rebuild and make things right. It's all about trust, respect, and never giving up. If this story touched your heart, like this video and comment your thoughts below. What do you think? How would you have handled the situation? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss out on more emotional, powerful stories like this. And if you know someone who'd love this, share it with them. Let's spread these messages of hope and resilience. Thank you again for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.